the problem is, and what we're here to really talk about in more detail and what FraudFighter focuses on, it's really the why of what we do, is the rise of synthetic fraud. That's people using real stolen information that they've taken from the dark web or other nefarious means, and they've put it together in an ID. Think about it, right? If I stole Kerry's information and then just put my face over it, and then you put that document through a verification process, it's going to come back verified, right? It's real information. It's Kerry's, even though it's stolen.
San Diego 911 emergency. You need to come right away. There's a man with a gun and it's loaded. Receiving emergency signal from 4 George 1141. Got a white female down. We need paramedics code, please. All available units will code that way.
Welcome to the De-Escalation Conversations Podcast. With me today is Matt Lorenc. He's the Director of Sales and Marketing. He joined a company called FraudFighter as the company's new Director of Sales and Marketing. Matt has been building and leading teams that consistently meet and beat growth records for the last 15 years, designing innovative systems and creating new business opportunities in financial technology, logistics, HR compliance, and investments. And he has a focus on SaaS companies. SaaS is not sassy like, hey, you're kind of rude. It's software as a service. And he helps companies that are in a hyper growth phase. Matt is excited to bring his passion for team building, data-driven management, diversification, and scalable business expansion to FraudFighter. Although he's an East Coast native, after finishing his degree at Fordham University in New York, he and his wife of 13 years, congratulations, moved to Los Angeles. Matt's a keen multi-instrumentalist. He enjoys writing and playing music, traveling, kayaking, wrestling for couch space with his 2-year-old American bully, whose name is Charli. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kerry. Appreciate you having me here.
Well, let me say this. Anybody who's listening to your bio, who's listened to the De-Escalation Conversations podcast for any time is going, oh, wait a second. I didn't hear first responder. I didn't hear school teacher. I didn't hear flight attendant and any of that. Why has Kerry got this dude on the show? Well, folks, I'm going to tell you why I have Matt on the show, and it's simple. He's an amazing guy. I've known him for years. We have had the pleasure of meeting several times in person. We spend probably more time on Zoom than in person, unfortunately.
These days.
But Matt's a great guy. And the reason that I wanted to have you have the opportunity to listen to Matt and gain a little bit of his wisdom, because he has so much to share, is that FraudFighter is a really cool company. And I wanted to talk about your work at FraudFighter and how dealing with fraud actually rolls in with de-escalation conversations directly. So here's the connection for anybody who's still kind of curious about that. You got the golden retriever head tilt, like, and you are, I don't know if your Charli does that or not to you. He just kind of looks at you like, what?
All the time.
the correlation between fraud, first of all of us are concerned about it on a regular basis.
Of course. With
technology increases, we've just seen fraud opportunities skyrocket, from phishing, PHISH, on email, where they're trying to get your information. I get probably at least 10 of those type of emails a day, and I'm always clicking on the report phishing. I don't think it does any good, but it makes me feel better. I'm doing something. And at least it's automatically blocking that one email address. But I see the same email come through 47 times from different email addresses. But we're all concerned about fraud. And FraudFighter does some really unique stuff. And I want to talk about, at some point, one thing in particular that's directly related for law enforcement officers that is a really cool thing that we're doing a partnership on. So to kick things off, let me ask you this. There's other companies. Well, why don't you describe what FraudFighter does, and then we'll talk about what FraudFighter does differently. How's that sound?
Sounds perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, happy to educate the viewers.
Thank you.
Yeah. So FraudFighter as a company, we've been around for over 20 years, right? And that's a unique differentiator, right? When I speak to clients and they ask me point blank, what separates you from other people in the market? Of course, I'll outline solutions, features, deliverables, but the length of time that we've been in this space really speaks for itself, right? That's knowledge, that's know-how, that's understanding how criminals and fraudsters in the space, how they operate, and our ability to counteract that. We like to describe it as really a punch, counterpunch mentality, right? Anytime they come up with some new method, we're there to circumvent it, right? And with that 20 years does come a long-standing knowledge and experience that obviously our clients benefit from. So first off the bat, 20 years in business really does stand alone for itself. But separately, and it's important to point out this key distinction, what we're focused on here, Kerry, is ID and document authentication. Now, in the marketplace, people will throw around authentication and verification simultaneously, thinking it's one and the same, right? Many times I'm speaking with a client, trying to educate them on the products we have, and they'll say, well, Matt, we have something. We already verify IDs. And before I get a chance to really hop into the authentication, they've either brushed me off. Unfortunately, I try to keep them on the line and build some rapport, but it's that misstep or that disconnect in terms of the real terminology. So a brief overview of that, right? Verification, which a lot of companies do, is a very basic process. It's taking an ID similar to the one I have here on my desk. And all it's doing is just grabbing that information, either just putting it directly into a CRM in terms of verifying a client, or it's using that information and bouncing it off, let's say, a credit check company or a background check company. And again, it's verifying. The problem is, and what we're here to really talk about in more detail and what FraudFighter focuses on, it's really the why of what we do, is the rise of synthetic fraud. That's people using real stolen information that they've taken from the dark web or other nefarious means, and they've put it together in an ID. Think about it, right? If I stole Kerry's information and then just put my face over it, and then you put that document through a verification process, it's going to come back verified, right? It's real information. It's Kerry's, even though it's stolen, right? And that's what a lot of companies and organizations have in place, thinking it's a way to mitigate and protect themselves against fraud. But quite frankly, it isn't. So what we offer is authentication, which is a key differentiator, right? So we're looking at the document itself, right? The actual physical document issued by a governing body, whether it be the state or a country, it could be passport, driver's license, ID card, green cards, literally whatever you have. We're working with over 7,000 different types of records right now that we're authenticating. And what we do is we look at what's inside the document, really unknown to most consumers or people. There's somewhere between 10 to 60 different forensic pieces of data that are really hidden to the naked eye within any given document, right? There might be certain images that fluoresce under ultraviolet light, infrared light. There's also information hidden in the barcodes, the mag strips, or there's also microprinting that, again, not visible to the naked eye. You need a system to really zoom in with high def capabilities to view it. And that's the authentication piece, right? We're looking at all those data points, whatever it is, state by state. Like I said, it could be 10, it could be 60, whatever it is, we're looking through it, we're authenticating it, Is it matching what it should be showing on there? Like, for example, this is a Texas ID. Whatever that data is on here, is it matching what is in our authentication engine? If it is, great. You get a beautiful transaction report that's tell the client, great, you've been authenticated. We can continue with the transaction. Or vice versa, if somebody has put together a synthetic ID with stolen information, we're going to catch them immediately. It takes 5 seconds to use the solutions we have in place. It doesn't slow down any sales transaction, but then it stops that in its tracks. So you don't have to take the extra steps, which we explain to many clients, where they say, well, we do a background check, we do a verification, we do a credit check. That's time, resources, and money spent. Whereas with the FraudFighter, and our system is called Paladin, with that platform, you don't have to worry about all that. You do your simple scan, you've authenticated it with a pass or a fail. If it's a pass, great, continue. If it's a fail, you're not spending, again, that time, money, and resources in those other verification processes. So that's what we're bringing to the marketplace. And it's very unique to Paladin. Again, first of all, the length of time we've been in business, the knowledge that we have here, the systems we've put in place in terms of the software that can look at all these different pieces of information and not just verify, as other companies claim to be, and really protect our clients. It's a real, we equate it sometimes to insurance, right? You have insurance on your car, not because you think you're going to get in an accident just tomorrow, but you're protected, right? So the same thought process where we instruct people to have this within their organization as the first line of defense to make sure that they're not interacting with, again, nefarious individuals, criminals that are trying to steal assets from companies. And I'll share this with the last point. We work a lot in the automotive space. Thousands of automotive dealers. And in 2023 alone, the FTC reported over 80,000 stolen vehicles through synthetic fraud. And I mean, if you crunch those numbers, my God, billions of dollars lost because they didn't take the time just to have the system in place. It takes 5 seconds and you could stop that transaction in its tracks.
80,000
in this year alone.
1 year, and we're not even done with.
We're not even done. Exactly. It was exactly.
Wow,
it was exactly.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you and I had talked before. My very first, when I went to Financial Crimes Unit, my very first case was a guy who stole someone's passport, went to DMV, got a temporary license, and he purchased a vehicle at a local car dealership here in San Diego, in the Kearny Mesa neighborhood. And the only reason he even got caught is the finance manager happened to be a reserve officer for one of the agencies here in San Diego. We have 17 different law enforcement agencies in San Diego. He was a reserve officer with one of them. And so he just had that extra layer of going on, right. Probably with a golden retriever head tilt, and he picked up on it, and he was suspicious, and so he made a phone call, and that phone call led to a little bit more information, which led to a little bit of information, which led to him giving me a phone call and going, "Hey, I got this situation. The guy's left already with the truck. We know it's not him." And it's a nice truck. It was a nice truck.
Yeah.
And so we set up a sting on the guy, which was, it was crazy that it worked. It was crazy that it worked because what we did was we had this finance manager call the suspect up because the suspect had listed his cell phone. So he calls the suspect up, and we've worked out this whole sting up in advance. So he calls him up and he goes, "Hey, this is Frank from pickup truck world. How do you like your new truck?" "I love it. Of course he loves it. It's free.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, I wanted to let you know, I'm a finance manager. I wanted to let you know that we approved you at whatever interest rate. I got great news for you. I was able to do some shopping around and I got you a better interest rate. Now, when I pitched this idea to the finance manager, he was like, what?
Yeah.
You want me to call the suspect up who stole a truck, who's never going to pay for the truck, and tell him I got him a better interest rate, but he needs to come back in and sign the paperwork for the new interest rate. Why would he ever do that? And I said, that's the beauty of it, because he conned you and he knows to keep the con up, to stretch out the amount of time that he has before this vehicle is reported stolen. He's got to appear as if he's a real buyer.
Right.
He has a role to play. We are on the stage of life. He's got a part in that play. He's got to play his part. All you have to do is say, hey, all you have to do is come back in. It's one signature on the new finance paperwork. We're going to save you hundreds of dollars every month with a lower interest rate.
Man.
And at first, finance manager's like, I don't think he's going to go for this, Kerry. I'm like, trust me. I know the brain. I know the mind. I know how people think. He's going to go for it. And sure enough, he did. So I'm plainclothes detective. I'm sitting in the waiting room area of this dealership because I have his picture because he went to DMV. He brought his temporary license. So I had his picture. They didn't have any security footage of him, but I knew what he looked like. And of course I know the vehicle.
Sure.
So he drives up and I see the truck and I'm like, well, I'm sure they've made more than one white Chevrolet pickup truck, but that's looking pretty good. Guy hops out and I'm like, oh yeah, that's him. He comes in, sits down in the finance manager's office, and I had a couple patrol officers parked around the corner, radio them in, they pull up, we walk into the office, and of course his back is to the door. So I walk in, I'm like, hey, Frank, how you doing? He's like, looks up at me, and the deal's done. So then Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, we do a search warrant on his apartment. He had boatloads of fake IDs. He was printing his own checks. He had, I think we seized like 4 or 5 computers. The regional forensics computer lab, they were hating me because I brought them so much work. I'm like, hey, here you go, guys. And can I have this tomorrow? Yeah, of course that's not gonna happen. But
put a rush on it. Yeah.
In your case, the ability to do authentication, the ability to do that at the same time you're doing verification, sounds like you really speed up that. Is this an identity theft situation? Yeah. You like put it on steroids, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. So the scanner that we provide to dealerships, I mean, I like to describe the size of it is about 2 wallets size. I mean, I could pull it up into the screen here if it's connected. Very small, right? It's compact, fits on the desk, right? Or you could have it in several showrooms. And in 5 seconds, you're putting the license in and it completes the transaction. And right on the screen, you get that report. We sometimes, and we hear pushback. We say, oh, well, hey, my sales guys, they're thinking commission, right? They just want sales. They don't want sales. They don't want to put friction or hurdles into this transaction. 5 seconds. I mean, I couldn't see how that would cause any issue. And the other option is not doing that. And then somebody has just walked off with $100,000s of dollar car. I mean, a story I heard recently, somebody walked off with a $200,000 Lamborghini because they didn't check the guy's license. They thought that, hey, if he's wanting to do a test drive, he must have the cash. So the guy went out with the guy for the test drive, drove around, came back to the lot. The criminal sitting in the seat say, I got some questions. Can you go ask your manager? Yeah. Hops out, boom, and then gone. And all they had to do was just before the test drive, which I would say 99% of our clients that's a key part of our solution. Even for a test drive, you're just scanning the ID, right? And having it on record. Should push come to shove, something does happen, and you can confirm this, Kerry, working in law enforcement, you have that transaction report, right? You have a record of it that you can share with the local police. Obviously, it has their name. Sorry, it has their photo, right? The ID that they've stolen, right? And it's pretty solid evidence of the crime. But I mean, if people are worried about adding 5 seconds to the sales cycle, the ramifications are huge. I mean, you lose your job, you lose assets for these companies. So it boggles my mind that people think that it would put any friction when all it does is literally protect you, really in the long run.
And even if there is any friction, it's not a high level of friction. It's low level. It's funny. I remember going to Vegas one time. And there was a jewelry store there, and I was interested to go in and check out what they had because it was a high-end jewelry store.
Sure.
And they had the doors locked and a security guard behind the door. And this was what's that city Aria City Center. So a lot of people in and out. So I tried the door, and the security guard pops the door partway open. And I said, are you guys closed? No, we're open. We're appointment only. And I said, oh, okay. And he tells me how to make an appointment. Very easy process to make an appointment. He goes, I do let everybody know we will be running a credit check before your appointment's approved. To walk in and look at some stones. I'm not driving a Lamborghini. I'm just looking through a display case. Appointment only, credit check. I look at that as high friction versus, may I see your driver's license, please?
Right. Exactly.
I bought several cars at dealerships, and I fully expect. In fact, it would worry me if they didn't verify who I was and authenticate me. So, not just verify, but authenticate. Changing my language.
Exactly. Authenticate. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Which is a good distinction, because one of the classes. In fact, I wrote this curriculum for my California Postmaster instructor journey. It was called Verifying Suspect Identity. It was I spent 3 days training people how, if you stop somebody on the street, whether they have ID or whether they don't, are they who they say they are?
Yeah.
And there was, for about a 10-year period until I stepped back from teaching that class, and I still stay connected, but I was the go-to state expert in California and for DOJ. DOJ contracted with me to travel around the country and train other law enforcement agencies.
There you go. Yeah.
How to verify suspect identity. Because of my expertise with the fake IDs. We actually had a group of instructors who taught fake ID classes in different states, who I coordinated into a mastermind group to be able to have that flow of information.
Sure.
And so on the law enforcement end of stuff, dealing with this fraud it's a big deal, and a lot of time is invested in a financial crimes case. The amount of proof is, in getting everything done, it's meticulous work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's talk on the de-escalation tie-in. So if you have somebody who you are saying, let's say you get a suspect.
Yep.
They know that they're in trouble because they start figuring out, oh, this guy's scanning my ID. I know it's fake. They're going to go into survival state, which on common terms, fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
There's a few other Fs that we could throw in there that all fit in, but fight, flight, or freeze.
Sure.
And the chances of them freezing is pretty slim. They're either going to fight or they're going to flee, run.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where the de-escalation training can really help, because it allows the person, let's say you've got a client who for some reason is totally legit,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason happens to feel that this is high friction. Well, with de-escalation training, you're immediately going to be able to shift their brain, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we teach, is how to reach inside somebody's brain, flip a switch, and
Right.
they calm down.
Right.
And it happens in seconds. That's the fascinating part, because it's all neuroscience. But the other part is, if you have a suspect,
Mm.
how can you do that with the suspect? And maybe you're doing it to keep them sticking around until the law enforcement, if law enforcement's going to respond. Law enforcement might not respond right away, but it
Right.
allows the person to be able to get statements from the suspect
Mm-hmm.
that will help in the prosecution of the case.
Sure.
For the law enforcement end, it allows them to do a better interview with the suspect, victims, and witnesses, because anybody, even if it's a white collar crime in the sense of its identity theft, I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you that salesman is going to be amped up and in survival state, that they either caught the guy, or they were almost ripped off, or they were
Right.
ripped off because their job is at stake, and they start flashing through all the things that might have happened. Let's say they caught the fraud.
Yeah.
Their mind is still going to go through all the things that might have happened where it could have gone wrong. That's how we are hardwired.
Mm-hmm.
We have a 10-to-1 negative bias in our brain as part of our survival system.
Right.
So how do you dial that salesperson down
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get a good statement from them, suspect description,
Yeah.
statement about what happened, all that stuff? So that's kind of where we come in on that end. But I want to talk more about FraudFighter.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: you talked about the difference between verification and authentication. You talked about how FraudFighter is different than other companies. Just being in the business for 20 years, that's a heck of a long time in the tech world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really long time.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you mentioned synthetic ID fraud.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about how what are the trends and what that is happening? Because we went from ordering it when I was a brand new vice detective. The big thing was you'd order it off the internet.
Right.
And what was hilarious, I got to tell you this one thing just real quick. What was hilarious to me was the stories that I heard about, I'd catch somebody with a fake ID, they ordered it off the internet, and I'd get them talking, get a good, I'd get them into executive state, I'd get a good interview. It was almost every single one of them. It was their third or fourth time ordering it off the internet before they actually got it. What happened was they submit, because you have to, all these websites would ask for their name,
Yep.
their address, their date of birth, their
Yep.
social.
They're perpetuating. Exactly.
What's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
mother's maiden name?
I
And
know.
all they're doing, they're just scamming these people. And then the people are paying them,
100%.
$100.
Yeah.
Here, let me give you all of my banking information. And by the way, my secret passcode name is my favorite pet, and my mother's maiden name. And by the way, where were you born?
Exactly.
And they're going to give them $100.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the scammer on the other end running this website is just laughing, because they got hard cold cash and they got hard cold.
They got the real info. Yep. 100%. Yeah.
So that was back in the day, if you will, about we ordered off the internet. I think people are maybe a little bit smarter than that. Probably not, but maybe. But now we can just manufacture it our own.
Right.
And so tell me about some of the current trends with
Sure. Yeah. I'll expand a little bit on what you mentioned there. So this license I was showing you before, I mean, we use fake ID purposes for educational here, right? We're not using them in any way. And I know Kerry's a retired sergeant here, so I gotta be careful. He doesn't slap the cuffs on me, but same thing, right? Off the internet, we didn't, like, to your point, we're not giving the other information. We can use dummy accounts and stuff to get it, right? So we can show samples, like Phil will show on the webinar. But if I put this under a UV light, it fluoresces perfectly like how a
What?
Texas ID will.
And
Front,
you got that off the internet.
yeah, front and back,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
But when I run it through my scanner, it fails across the board in terms of the infrared patterns not matching, the mag strip not matching what's on the front. So across the board, it fails. So that, this still exists as a way for people to get IDs, and it's synthetic in the sense that you could have somebody else's stolen information and then go through this website to create it, right? Not using yours, right?
Right.
And then this.
Yeah. So I got to pause you for a second because I'm flashing back. I travel a lot. And the last time I traveled, I was down in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
flying out of a small airport.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a scanner. TSA. They didn't have a scanner. What the TSA guard did was he held the ID up and he was like doing all, is this you? I think he even had one eye closed. Hey, is this you? And then he took his little UV flashlight
Yep.
and he went, burp, and he just flashed it.
Yep.
On that ID, because I'm going to have my picture on it,
Yep.
he hits it with his flashlight. It's going to fluoresce,
Yep.
which to him goes, oh, it must be real. And it
Yep.
was such a cursory check. Now,
Totally.
I want to back up a second and reiterate. I am in Texas, which means border state, which means people flooding across,
Exactly.
documented terrorists, people on the terrorist watch list.
Exactly.
coming across.
Exactly. Yep.
And this guard isn't even using a scanner. He's using I think he probably went to the dollar store, which is now a $5 store, and bought it because in Texas and Arizona, UV
Yeah.
lights, you can use them. They sell them everywhere,
Right.
not for checking IDs, but because scorpions fluoresce under black light. And so, I learned this
Yeah.
because my mom used to live in Arizona before
And
she
you
passed
find
away.
them. Yeah.
And she had a UV light. And I'm like, Mom, why do you have a UV light? She goes, oh, I hunt scorpions at night.
Yep.
When you're retired and 84 years old, you get to do crazy stuff like that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right? So she's
Yeah.
hunting scorpions at nighttime in the
Mhm.
desert. I'm like, oh, Mom, that's probably
Yep.
not a good idea. I don't want you to fall and break a hip. But
Yeah.
what I'm drawing an analogy here is the importance of your equipment.
Right.
Just
Exactly.
taking the humor out of it and the shock out of it. The
Yeah.
importance of your equipment is if I'm just doing a check based on the security features that I might have heard about from some law enforcement training class or I read about in some ID checking guide,
Mm-hmm.
and that ID, because I'm doing such a cursory check,
Yep.
that ID passes it.
Yep.
But it's still synthetic fraud. It's still a fake ID. But your
Exactly.
scanner in 5 seconds is going to come back with all the information,
Yeah.
and it's going to give a documentation of what that ID was that person had,
Exactly.
which means we can now prosecute with that. That just helps. I
Exactly.
mentioned the word meticulous earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have that meticulous documentation as a financial crimes detective
Mm-hmm.
was huge for me.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going
100%.
on the synthetic fraud because you're
Yeah.
blowing my mind here.
100%. So yeah, and I'll just expand a little bit about the UV thing. I'll share a story. I'm working with this bank out of Florida, and I've had a couple calls with them. Things are progressing well, and they threw up a hurdle with me, and they said, Matt, we talked to this law enforcement gentleman, and he said there's no way you can stop IDs. And I said, was he using like a UV bulb? He goes, yeah. I said, well, there you go. He's limited in knowing what's available, right? So it was very unfortunate. He had kind of warped their perspective. Luckily, I brought them back on track with what I said, with what I showed them. I said, look, I can put this under UV bulb. It's going to confirm it. And if that's all he has in his knowledge of checking, then of course, there's no way to stop that. But that's not what we're doing, right? We're looking at the full document, the issuing document itself, the data in it, and then bouncing it off our document authentication engine. So just to give you another example of how, unfortunately, the knowledge that some people have and then try to perpetuate to other groups with, I don't know why they would put fear in these people, thinking they have no no protection. But luckily, I was able to kind of correct that, and we're going to be moving ahead, which is great. But back to your point of synthetic ID fraud, you've heard of the dark web, Kerry, I assume.
Yes. I've visited.
You visit the dark web. I meant, hopefully, as a police officer and not
correct.
In your free time. No, so,
computer forensics, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So on the dark web, you can purchase not one, thousands of people's real information in these bundles, which is social, green card, driver's license. So they have all this information, and then they'll create, then what they'll do is they have that, they go out into the world, they recruit, criminal, centric individuals and say, hey, you 10 people, you're going to come with me. This week, you're going to be Bob. Next week, you're going to be Bill. And then they go out into the world and they commit these crimes, right? So the information, unfortunately, is there. Unfortunately, you hear the data breaches with Equifax, with Facebook. It's only getting worse. And, that's why we're here, and not to be rude or diminish that, but as long as that's there, we're here to stop it. Remember, I said it's a whole counter-punch mentality. So until we somehow eliminate all cyber crimes and hacking into databases, I'm gonna have a job. So it's just
you are set, and I love how you're so violent with the counter punch. I love it. So. Yeah. It's interesting too, because I was just thinking, and it's these big dogs like Experian, Equifax, they hold massive amounts of personal data, and they get broken into.
Right.
And, I don't know that there's been a time that I've gone into my browser's password, I got to look this password up, and it stores it automatically. Yeah. That I haven't gotten this password was used in a data breach and you should change it. I'm like, first of all, how do you know? Second of all, oh crap. Yes. Thank you for letting me know.
Right.
So that's happening all
I've had the same thing. I don't want to name drop companies unless they start sponsoring us here, but one of them I've used gave me a detailed list, right? It was like 10 of your passwords were used here, and here. It's like, my gosh. Thank God for this website, giving me that information.
Yeah.
But and again, just to close the loop on synthetic fraud, right? I don't want, years ago, people would just create just a fake ID, right? They'd get some laminate paper, they'd make up some numbers on there, and they'd try their luck at the liquor store somewhere, right? Right. That's not what we're talking about. It's real stolen information. It's going to pass most checks, background check, credit card check, e-verify check through the federal government for HR onboarding. It will even pass. We do a lot of work in the gun shop industry, and the background checks and the NICS checks that they have to do there. It passes that as well because it's real. And what we're just trying to make sure we educate people on and really get the message across is you're protecting your business. So you're not going to get hit with, for example, with gun shops, ATF. They hit you once, you're done. Show's over. Yep. A lot of those shops are generational, right? Their father's father started with 5 Glocks and built it up to a multi-billion-dollar industry. ATF comes in once, finds out that you took an ID, or they even pose as somebody. You're done. One strike rule, you're done. So not only are we trying to protect their legacy, but then also, give them a way to not have to invest time, resource, and money in all those other things. Should you get that fail right off the bat, right? And that's the education, and that's the story that we're sharing with people, and really talking to them from an empathetic level, right? Where we don't come across as salesy, right? We're subject matter experts in this space. We really understand the nuances of the different industries, whether it's automotive, finance, equipment rental, gun shops. Just off the top of my head, but each one is unique in terms of the use cases for our products, but they all need them. And it all should be the first line of defense regardless of what they're doing in terms of their transactions with clients.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing, because you guys have the Paladin desktop, you have the Web ID platform, and you have the Paladin mobile app.
Exactly. Yeah.
All three of those. Briefly describe each
Sure.
one of those.
Yeah, great.
Why
Excellent.
do I need all, or why would I even consider all three, or do I need all three?
Of
Maybe
course.
I just need one.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you, Kerry. So the Paladin desktop, as I showed you before, the scanner, right? It's a closed system scanner connected to a CPU or a laptop, and there's a software system called Paladin that you download from us, but it's closed. The engine that's authenticating all the documents is part of the software, so you're not bouncing off to the internet, you're not going Wi-Fi. It's all closed. So I say that because several of the equipment rental guys that I'm working with, they got their shops where they're not inside, they're somewhere out front, they're with the big cat earth mover trying to do something. They don't got internet, but they can plug something in, right? They might have a long extension cord just to power it on, and they can do some verification, right? So that's the desktop scanner, right? It's low cost, connects right into laptop or CPU. You download the software and you're doing your scans in 5 seconds or less, and you get a beautiful transaction report. Happy to share some information with Kerry after the meeting to circulate kind of some PDFs of how that does look like, for you all attendees here. And then the Web ID, it's a great solution for doing remote transactions when you're not face to face. So think over state lines, right? I'm in California and I see a beautiful Mercedes in Nevada, right? And I want to purchase it. I can call up the place in Nevada, and if they're working with us, which most are, thousands and thousands of dealerships work with us, I speak to the guy there, guy or gal, and he says, yeah, you know what? Certainly, you can have it. We can start the paperwork. I need to authenticate you. They log into the Paladin cloud platform, which is called Enterprise, and through there they send an encrypted end-to-end text message. The client gets that message. It's speed of light, as fast as text messages go, and then what they see in their end, it says, hey, Kerry, this is Matt from Store 5 in Nevada, whatever, let's start the authentication process. They click a link, Paladin opens up on their phone, and then they're asked to simply take a photo of the front and back of their license, just like how you do mobile check deposit, which I think we're all kind of used to in this day and age, right?
Yeah.
So, very simple. So the same authentication that's happening in the software and the scanner is happening through the web app. Front and back of the license is taken, it's authenticated, and then we ask them for a selfie. And this is important because what the fraudsters will do, right? If I've stolen your information, Kerry, and I'm trying to buy a car or something over state lines, and they're trying to authenticate me remotely, I'll do the front and the back. Comes to the selfie, I might go on your LinkedIn or another social. I'm going to grab your photo, right? And I'm going to try to selfie it. That's not going to work, right? So our liveness test, like the secret sauce, so to say, it's making sure you're alive, right? It's looking at the subtle movements of your eyes, the tilt of your head, that you're not just an image from social media or a picture or something, or not even like a 4K HD video, which you think like, oh, maybe I could trick it. The problem with that is the reason why 4K HD videos look so amazing, they've actually smoothed out the frame rate. So the normal, tilt and jerking of a live head, that's not in the 4K because they've smoothed it out behind the scenes to make it look so high def, right?
Wow.
So we get the selfie. It does face match based on the photo and the license, and then a liveness match. So that's confirmed. And the same transaction report that you would get with, again, the desktop scanner and the desktop system, you get that through the enterprise web portal. What the client sees on their end, all they see is a success, right? They're not told one way or the other. The dealership on the back end gets that report. They can see pass or they can see fail, and then through their KYC, know your customer rules, most likely they're going to say, if it's a fail, I say, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to continue with this, or you're going to have to come in store. And if they're a fraudster, they're not they're not going to come in, right? So that again is another layer of protection. And I would say, the thousands of dealerships that we have, they have both. I'll also talk about the mobile app, but they have the desktop scanners in-house, right, for people coming in, and then they also have the web ID for doing the remote transactions, which are popular more and more and more these days. Think about COVID, that's all it was, right? So a big use case was built around that, and it hasn't really subsided. And we can also integrate into many dealership websites. So right in the website, if you want to book a test drive or even purchase a car, you're clicking that button, you're getting that authentication text link automatically without having to call somebody in to send it, and you go through that same process.
Wow.
Yeah. Now the third one, the mobile app, very similarly, it's same thing, right? We're authenticating IDs. But the mobile app is when you're with someone face to face, but not necessarily in an office or at a desk. Good use case, again, you're at a dealership, you're at a massive one, where I live, they got Galpin Ford. I mean, it's 5 football fields of cars, right? And you might be out there with the client and they say, you know what, I want a test driver. I'm ready to go. I want this one. So to speed up that process, the sales guy can just pull up the app on their phone and ask for the license from the person and then authenticate it right then and there. And then the only difference is there's no selfie because you're looking at the person, right? You're just like, this is you, right? So you do that process, and then the same thing happens. You get a pass or a fail and are able to move on with the transaction. So that's the mobile app. And then the web app is the remote from over state lines. And then the desktop solution where you're doing it in an office face to face with somebody.
That is so cool. So I see the ability for a patrol officer who makes a traffic stop and they run the license plate number, they run the driver's license number, and yep, it's a valid license in that name, but that ID has not been authenticated.
Yeah.
They've validated, they verified the information, but they haven't authenticated the ID. Right. And the ability for an officer to use that app and scan it out in the field, boy, that'd be an important step for verifying suspect identity.
Yeah. That would be huge.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're one of my coworkers was up at a police conference up in Canada last week, and that's what they were kind of pitching to the officers there, right? Kind of these tools that they weren't aware of, right? To just kind of speed things along, give you more information on the field, obviously protect you, and that's what it's all about, right? Mitigating risk, right? De-escalation of various issues. So yeah, we're hoping to see more penetration into law enforcement overall.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There's so much more we could talk about. Matt, thanks for being here on the show. I really appreciate it. And here's what I'd like to be able to do. Folks, if you're listening to this and you want to learn more about FraudFighter, what's really cool is this. FraudFighter, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, has agreed to work with us and partner with us. And so here's what you get to do. Go to theidea.world/FraudFighter. And the cool thing is FraudFighter is going to give you a discount on any of the equipment, any solution that you get as a gift to the folks that work with IDEA. So just because you're listening to this podcast, you fall into that group. So go to theidea.world/FraudFighter. You'll be able to get all of Matt's information, all of his contact information. You'll be able to talk to somebody at FraudFighter. And all you have to do is say, hey, by the way, I got a guy. And that guy happens to be IDEA, the International De-Escalation Association. Tell them that IDEA sent you. They're going to give you a significant discount. That's pretty darn cool. So Matt, thanks for you guys being willing to do that for the folks that listen to this podcast, the members of our association. I just think that's an amazing, amazing benefit to that you've been able to allow us to grant to our membership and our listeners. So thank you for that. You guys are a great company.
Of course. Well, it's been a pleasure, Kerry. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope to see you again soon on the next podcast. We should do this again soon. Really a pleasure.
Absolutely. In fact, you know what? Let's do a webinar masterclass training where we can dive into more of this verifying suspect identity and preventing fraud, because all of us, whether we're on duty or off duty, doesn't matter whether we're a school teacher or a flight attendant or a first responder, we're all concerned about not becoming victims of fraud.
Exactly.
So you up for doing that?
I'm up. Yeah, sounds perfect.
All right, listeners, look for that. We'll be sending out information. Matt, you and I will talk about scheduling that.
Perfect.
Kind of let's tentatively plan on December of 2023 at some point. Tentatively, listeners, look for that information. We'll have it up. It'll also be posted on that page, theidea.world/FraudFighter. We'll definitely put it there, and we'll also send out some emails so you know about it. That way, you can protect yourselves, protect your families against fraud. I know for my mom, I was like super protective, because when she was in her 80s, she would tell me, "Oh, I responded to this email. They were such nice people. They were selling silver and gold." I'm like, my God. That was almost a full-time job, making sure she didn't make a mistake, you know.
Right.
It's
crazy out there. So I mean, yeah.
So let's have that discussion for our members, for our listeners on fraud, and folks. Please check out theidea.world. There's a ton of great resources there, regardless of what occupation you have. If you're dealing with misbehavior in the classroom as a teacher, if you're dealing with misbehavior at 37,000 feet where there is no cover unit, you have to deal with it. Your first responder, we have resources for you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to the show. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.
Take care.
I hope you found a lot of great value in this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. Please be sure to go out to our website, theidea.world, THEIDEA.world. On that website, just click on the link that resonates with you most. If you're a K-12 educator, if you're a firefighter, medical services, law enforcement, flight attendants, whatever industry you're in, we have specialized training for you. So check that training out, because literally it can save your life, it can save your relationship, it can save your career. So check out theidea.world. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.